Latin America isn't just about music, dance, or carnival. It's also about sandwiches so bold, so packed with flavor that they once defined whole neighborhoods. From streets lined with smoky grills to small family kitchens, these creations told stories of revolution, immigration, and survival. Some were gigantic feasts, others simple bites that fueled workers through long days. But many of them vanished, buried by modern fast food and fading traditions. Today, we're uncovering 25 forgotten Latin American sandwiches, and I promise, the deeper we go, the wilder and more delicious they get. 1. Chivito, Uruguay's national pride. The chivito is no ordinary sandwich. It's a mountain. Born in the 1940s when a chef improvised with steak instead of goat, it became Uruguay's signature dish. Picture this: a juicy steak layered with ham, bacon, mozzarella, lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, and sometimes even a fried egg, all inside a fluffy bun. It was messy, overstuffed, and glorious, so filling that families shared it on weekends. For decades, it was the pride of Montevideo cafes. But with changing diets and lighter meals taking over, the chivito slipped from daily life. Still, if you think steak stacked this high was indulgent, wait until you see how Mexico drowned their sandwich, literally. 2. Torta ahogada, the drowned sandwich of Guadalajara. In Guadalajara, Mexico, sandwiches weren't just eaten, they were baptized. The torta ahogada, or drowned sandwich, was a crusty barote roll stuffed with carnitas and then submerged in a fiery chili sauce. Eaters braced themselves as sauce dripped everywhere. It wasn't a meal, it was a challenge. For working-class families, it was both filling and thrilling, a dish that turned a quick bite into a spectacle. Vendors lined the streets, serving them wrapped in paper, sauce soaking through. But as fast food replaced messy street traditions, the torta ahogada nearly drowned in history. And yet, if you thought chili-soaked bread was intense, the next sandwich brought morning crunch and pork fat sizzling on the streets of Lima. 3. Pan con chicharrón, Peru's crispy morning bite. In Lima, mornings once began with the sound of pork fat crackling in hot oil. Vendors fried thick slabs of pork belly until crispy, then layered them inside soft bread with sweet potato slices and pickled red onions. The pan con chicharrón was salty, sweet, and tangy all at once, a perfect breakfast to power workers through the day. For decades, it was Lima's morning ritual, but lighter breakfasts and modern cafes pushed it aside. Today, it survives mostly on weekends, a nostalgic bite that recalls the heartbeat of Peru's streets. Still, compared to crispy pork, the next sandwich carried more than flavor. It carried the immigrant story of Cuba itself. 4. Cuban sandwich, the immigrant's icon. Few sandwiches carry history like the Cuban sandwich. In the early 1900s, Cuban immigrants in Tampa and Miami created it as a portable meal for cigar factory workers. Layered with roast pork, ham, Swiss cheese, pickles, and mustard, then pressed until golden, it was both simple and bold. It symbolized immigrant pride, the merging of cultures into something uniquely American, yet deeply Cuban. Over time, chains copied it into pale imitations, losing the crunch, the richness, the heart. Still, if you think pork and pickles pressed together was powerful, the next sandwich added fresh green beans to beef, turning Chilean tradition into something unforgettable. 5. Chacarero, the fresh green bean sandwich. Chile's chacarero wasn't just a sandwich, it was a statement. Thin slices of steak or pork were layered with tomatoes, chili peppers, and surprisingly, green beans. Crisp, fresh, and fiery, it was a fusion of farm and street. Imagine biting into bread and getting both sizzling meat and garden vegetables. It was balance and chaos in one bite. For decades, it was the pride of Santiago's street stalls, eaten quickly during lunch breaks. but fast food chains offering simpler burgers pushed it aside. Still, if you think green beans in a sandwich were bold, the next creation went even bigger, stacking 3 types of meat into one Puerto Rican monster. 6. Tripleta, Puerto Rico's triple meat monster. Puerto Rico's tripleta was exactly what the name promised, a triple threat. Grilled steak, chicken, and pork were piled into one massive sandwich, then drowned in ketchup, mayo sauce, lettuce, tomato, and cheese. It was messy, indulgent, and completely over the top. Street vendors served it late at night, where hungry crowds devoured it after dancing and drinking. It wasn't just food, it was survival fuel for the island's nightlife. But as diets shifted and global chains moved in, the tripleta became more of a weekend craving than a daily meal. Still, if you think 3 meats were too much, the next sandwich proved that sometimes just one perfect steak was enough to win a nation's heart. 7. Lomito, Argentina's steak between bread. In Argentina, steak isn't just dinner, it's identity. The lomito turned that pride into a handheld feast. Imagine a juicy steak sandwich topped with ham, cheese, lettuce, tomato, mayo, and often a fried egg. It was indulgent, rich, and perfectly Argentine, eaten in Buenos Aires cafes where tango music floated through the air. The lomito symbolized abundance, but as fast food burgers rose in popularity, its layered elegance slipped away. Still, if you think steak and bread was Argentina's boldest move, the next sandwich proved that sometimes the magic happened after midnight. 8. Medianoche, Havana's midnight bite. Cuba's nightlife gave birth to the medianoche, literally midnight sandwich. Built like the Cuban sandwich but with sweet egg bread instead of crusty rolls, it was softer, sweeter, and perfect for late-night dancing crowds. Packed with roast pork, ham, Swiss cheese, mustard, and pickles, it was pressed until melty and golden. It carried the rhythm of Havana nights, fueling dancers until dawn. But as Cuba changed and American fast food crept in, the medianoche became harder to find. Still, if you think midnight sandwiches were wild, the next one crowned a Venezuelan queen. 9. Arepa Reina Pepiada, Venezuela's Queen Arepa. In Venezuela, arepas were daily bread, corn patties split open and filled with anything. But the Reina Pepiada, or curvy queen, was something special. Shredded chicken mixed with avocado and mayonnaise, stuffed into the warm arepa. Created in the 1950s to honor a Venezuelan beauty queen, it was indulgent yet fresh, creamy yet hearty. For decades, it reigned as Venezuela's most beloved sandwich, but with changing tastes and economic struggles, it's now a nostalgic treasure. Still, if avocado and chicken made royalty in Venezuela, the next creation melted into Brazil's most iconic bite. 10. Bauru, Brazil's melty classic. Born in São Paulo in the 1930s, the bauru was created by a hungry law student who wanted the perfect sandwich. It delivered: roast beef layered with melted mozzarella, tomato, and pickles on French bread. But here's the twist. The bread was hollowed out so the gooey cheese could melt directly inside. The bauru was warm, melty, and satisfying, quickly spreading across Brazil. Yet outside the country, it was forgotten, overshadowed by simpler burgers. Still, if melted cheese and bread made history, the next sandwich turned Peru's festival tables into handheld delights. 11. Butifarra, Lima's festive ham sandwich. In Peru, celebrations weren't complete without the butifarra. Built on a crusty roll, it featured slices of jamón del país, garlic and spice-rubbed Peruvian ham, topped with lettuce, onions, and ají chili sauce. It was smoky, tangy, and festive, eaten during carnivals and family gatherings. The butifarra symbolized joy, laughter, and togetherness. But as processed cold cuts took over, its homemade magic disappeared. Still, if ham at a festival was colorful, the next sandwich was pure chaos. Chile's overloaded answer to the hot dog. 12. Completo, Chile's overloaded hot dog. Chile didn't settle for simple hot dogs. They created the completo, meaning complete. Picture a hot dog buried under layers of avocado, tomatoes, sauerkraut, mayonnaise, and sometimes cheese. It was so overloaded you needed 2 hands and several napkins. It wasn't just a snack. It was a national icon, eaten at street stands and family tables. But as global fast food chains brought cleaner, simpler options, the messy completo lost ground. Still, if Chile could turn a hot dog into a tower, wait until you see how Brazil made one giant slice of mortadella into a sandwich taller than your fist. 13th, mortadella sandwich, São Paulo's giant bite. Walk through São Paulo's bustling Mercado Municipal and you'll smell it before you see it. The mortadella sandwich. Piled high with nearly half a pound of thin-sliced mortadella, stacked between fresh bread with melted cheese. It was so big that tourists could barely hold it. Locals joked that it wasn't a sandwich. It was a workout. It became Brazil's most photographed food, but outside of São Paulo, it faded into obscurity. Still, if mortadella stacked sky-high amazed you, Mexico had its own tower, crafted with sesame rolls and layers of smoky flavor. Sandwich number 14, Chamita Poblana, Puebla's towering sandwich. In Puebla, Mexico, sandwiches were treated like architecture. The Chamita Poblana was built on sesame-studded bread unique to the region, layered with breaded meat cutlets, avocado, white cheese, papalo herbs, and smoky chipotle peppers. It was enormous, fragrant, and bursting with flavor. Street vendors sold them as meals fit for a king, but their complexity made them harder to keep alive in a world of fast meals. Today, it's mostly found in Puebla itself. Still, if bread towers defined Mexico, Puerto Rican immigrants in Chicago crafted something even stranger, replacing bread with fried plantains. 15. Jibarito, Puerto Rico's plantain sandwich, Chicago. In Chicago's Puerto Rican neighborhoods, innovation struck. Why use bread when you had plantains? The Jibarito swapped buns for flattened fried green plantains, then filled them with steak, cheese, lettuce, tomato, and garlic mayo. Crispy, savory, and unforgettable, it became a symbol of Puerto Rican identity in the Midwest. It was exotic yet comforting, a sandwich that told a story of survival and adaptation. But as chains ignored it, the Jibarito slipped into local legend. Still, if fried plantains for bread blew your mind, the next sandwich showed how Argentina made sausage into the anthem of its streets. Sandwich 16, Choripan, Argentina's street anthem. If Argentina has a soundtrack, it's the crackle of sausages grilling at an asado. The choripan, short for chorizo plus pan, was the people's sandwich. A smoky chorizo sausage split open and tucked into crusty bread, topped with tangy chimichurri. It wasn't just food, it was community, eaten outside soccer stadiums, on street corners, and at family barbecues. For decades, it was everywhere. But as fast food chains spread and lifestyles shifted, the choripan's daily presence faded. Still, if sausage and bread became Argentina's anthem, the next sandwich showed how Colombia turned cheese into its own national comfort. 17. Arepa de queso, Colombia's cheesy tradition. Colombians didn't just eat cheese, they stuffed it into their daily bread. The arepa de queso was a simple yet powerful sandwich. Warm corn cake split open and filled with melted white cheese. Sold at street stalls, it was eaten for breakfast, lunch, and even late at night. Gooey, chewy, and satisfying, it symbolized comfort in its purest form. But as global chains offered packaged snacks, the arepa de queso slowly slipped from daily life. Still, if melted cheese and cornbread warmed Colombia, Chile was ready to melt beef and cheese together into something far heavier. Sandwich 18. Barros Luco, Chile's melting beef and cheese. Named after a Chilean president who loved it, the Barros Luco was simplicity elevated. Thin slices of beef smothered in melted cheese, pressed inside fresh bread. It was rich, heavy, and indulgent, often eaten as a hearty lunch in Santiago cafes. For years, it was a national classic, but its plainness made it fade as more elaborate sandwiches took over. Today, it's mostly remembered in name. Still, if beef and cheese ruled Chile, Venezuela was about to shock everyone with a steak sandwich that was as wild as it was overflowing. 19. Pepito, Venezuela's loaded steak sandwich. In Venezuela, the pepito was the street king of late-night hunger. Vendors grilled thin steak, chopped it up, and piled it into a long roll with cheese, lettuce, sauces, and sometimes even French fries right inside. It was smoky, greasy, and addictive, the kind of food that fueled university students and night owls. Each city had its own style, making it more of a movement than just a meal. But as imported fast food grew, the pepito lost ground to burgers. Still, if steak piled with fries was wild, Mexico had an answer that literally painted bread red. 20. Pambazo, Mexico's revolutionary bite. During Mexico's revolution, food had to be cheap, filling, and portable. Enter the pambazo, white bread dipped in guajillo chili sauce, then stuffed with potatoes, chorizo, lettuce, cheese, and cream. Red, fiery, and messy, it became the flavor of the people's struggle. Street vendors sold it as both a snack and a statement, but as modern snacks took over, the pambazo slipped into obscurity, surviving mostly at festivals. Still, if red chili bread amazed you, the next sandwich turned breakfast into something bright and unexpected. 21. Perico arepa, Venezuela's breakfast surprise. Not all arepas were heavy. Some started the day light and colorful. The Perico arepa was split open and filled with scrambled eggs mixed with onions, tomatoes, and peppers. A rainbow breakfast in your hands. It was cheap, nutritious, and fast, perfect for workers rushing out the door. For decades, it was Venezuela's morning ritual. But as packaged cereals and bakery pastries grew popular, the humble Perico arepa faded into nostalgia. Still, if scrambled eggs colored Venezuela's mornings, Argentina had a pork sandwich waiting that roared with smoky flavor. 22. Bondiola sandwich, Argentina's pork feast. In Buenos Aires, smoky pork shoulder, bondiola, was slow-cooked until tender, then stuffed into bread with chimichurri or mustard. The bondiola sandwich was the workers' prize, sold at street grills, outside factories, and soccer matches. It was hearty, juicy, and dripping with flavor. For years, it was Argentina's answer to barbecue. But as international chains spread, bondiola became more of a special treat than daily street food. Still, if pork fueled Argentina, Cuba turned thin steak into the daily bite of the working class. 23. Pan con bistec, Cuba's workers' steak sandwich. In Havana, thin sliced steak was marinated, grilled, and stacked into bread with onions, potato sticks, and mayonnaise. The pan con bistec was cheap, filling, and beloved by workers rushing to factories. It wasn't fancy, but it was fast and flavorful. Cuba's answer to the fast food burger before fast food even existed. Over time, it was overshadowed by the Cuban sandwich, but locals still remember it fondly. Still, if Cuba's simple steak sandwich was a humble hero, Brazil went the opposite direction, stuffing hot dogs with everything imaginable. 24. Cachorro quente, Brazil's wild hot dog. Brazil didn't stop at hot dogs, they reinvented them. The cachorro quente was a bun filled not only with sausages, but also corn, peas, cheese, potato sticks, and sauces piled so high the bread could barely hold it. It was chaos and joy in every bite, sold on street corners late at night. For decades, it was Brazil's guilty pleasure, but cleaner, simpler fast food versions slowly pushed it aside. Still, if Brazil turned hot dogs into carnivals, Mexico turned breakfast into a handheld revolution. 25. Torta de tamal. Mexico's guajolota. Only in Mexico could tamales become bread filling. Vendors split open bolillo rolls and stuffed them with hot tamales, creating the torta de tamal, nicknamed guajolota. Heavy, starchy, and comforting, it was the ultimate breakfast on the go. Students, workers, and children ate them rushing out the door. But as modern cafes grew, the guajolota became more of a street memory than a daily ritual. Still, it remains one of Mexico's most unique food traditions. From Uruguay's towering chivito, to Mexico's fiery pambazo, to Brazil's chaotic cachorro quente, these sandwiches weren't just meals, they were identity, culture, and history pressed between bread. They tell the story of workers, immigrants, festivals, and families who turned simple ingredients into unforgettable traditions. Today, many have faded into nostalgia, but maybe, just maybe, bringing them back could also bring us closer to the stories they carry. So tell me, which forgotten Latin American sandwich would you taste first?